Hello there. What's going on, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about what you can expect for X-Wing miniatures in 2021. For all you X-Wing players out there that might be a little worried or wondering what are we going to get, they really haven't announced anything yet. Well, there are some things to talk about for what we can expect for 2021, both things we know and things we can predict. So I want to thank today's sponsor as well, Luxury Playstyle. If you haven't already, you've got to get your hands on some of these tokens. They are absolutely amazing. They're full metal tokens. They're more than just X-Wing as well. There's all kinds of other games. I use them in my Legion battle reports as well. Also, if you order for $35 or more, you're going to get a free Crabbok token with the lightsaber nunchucks in there. It's a double-sided token that we worked together to design that token for people who use code Crabbok VIP, which is also going to save you 15%. So, hey, some of you guys got a little extra money right now from that stimulus. Be sure to spend it and help support Luxury Playstyle, help support the channel here, and also get yourself some awesome tokens in the process. All right, so let's talk about 2021. We've got some potential things that are coming out for X-Wing that may have been pushed back or may not have been pushed back. Some of you are probably wondering, what all is coming out right now, because throughout X-Wing's history, we've kind of always had stuff kind of on the horizon, or almost always had stuff on the horizon where something would get announced and then something else was still coming, and then there was sometimes overlap. Sometimes we'd have like kind of two waves announced before one came out, and right now we've kind of like where everything that's been announced has come out. We just recently had another wave come out not that long ago, and there are a lot of people who are probably wondering what's going on right now, especially since Atomic Mass Games is taking over X-Wing, as well as all of the other Star Wars miniatures games from Fantasy Flight Games. There's probably going to be some slowdowns in 21 due to that, because of the fact that, hey, a whole new studio is now taking over. We know that certain people like Max Brook is no longer with Fantasy Flight Games, and so there's going to have to be some personnel transitions. Also, some personnel would have to have actually moved across the country to kind of work with Atomic Mass Games, since they're Seattle-based as opposed to Fantasy Flight, which is Minneapolis-based. I would expect there to be a lot of changes from 2021 moving forward. One of those will be like the packaging will eventually change. I'm sure there's going to be some reprints for 100% of the product eventually, probably taking off the Fantasy Flight Games logo off of these games and moving that over to Atomic Mass Games at some point. So I think we're going to probably expect some slowdowns in 2021. But that's not all bad news, because there's also new product coming out, and I don't think we're going to see the Atomic Mass Games logo show up on here right away. I think our very next wave of stuff is still going to come out with Fantasy Flight, because Fantasy Flight has developed the next couple of stuff that is all going to come out, and some of it has already been talked about. So I want to talk about that first, because if you guys remember back to Gen Con, during all of the live stream events, they first announced, hey, we've got Aces style packs that are going to be coming out for this game. And one of the things we learned is that the first one was going to be Heralds of Hope, although they didn't say Heralds of Hope, but they said the first one would be for the New Republic, and that turned out to be Heralds of Hope. And and we were like basically promised that we were getting Aces packs. Now, for them to have announced this, they were probably pretty far along in the development step, probably already done with all of their playtesting and everything like that. And this was a long time ago, so I would expect that there's this plus a little more. So let's talk a little bit about the Aces packs, because I actually have some news on the Aces packs. Not a whole lot of news, but some things were kind of leaked through Lion Rampant, and I had been talking a lot about the different names of the packs. Well, we now have dates as well. So we actually have street dates on these Aces packs, according to Lion Rampant, which is an Asmodee-owned distributor. So this is pretty good dates. Now, they are potentially subject to change, because some of these dates have changed before, but not by very, very much. So this is going to give us a pretty good indication of when we can expect these next packs, and it looks like late March 26th. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that this is the only stuff that is coming out. Now, this image was pulled straight from Lion Rampant's website, and basically our next three Aces packs are going to be Phoenix Cell, Sky Strike Academy, and Fugitives and Collaborators. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I've talked about these packs before. While they haven't been officially announced, they have been teased, and we know that Aces packs are coming. And of course, from that image that I just showed you is kind of where they basically hinted in not so direct terms that at least one of them would be Empire and at least one of them would be Rebel. The one that is going to be Rebel is almost certainly going to be Phoenix Cell, which will feature people probably like Hera and or maybe Sabine and or some of the other people who were in Phoenix Cell during Star Wars Rebels is probably going to be very much related to that. I would almost guarantee you will see an A-Wing and maybe X-Wings, since there were a couple of X-Wings flown at least in one episode of Star Wars Rebels, but it's unsure whether or not it's going to be just those two ships in the kind of the Aces style pack that we saw with Heralds of Hope, where it was 2 X-Wings and 1 A-Wing. Seems like the Rebels could very much get that, especially since Heralds of Hope featured X-Wing and A-Wing upgrades that can also copy over to the Rebels, and now all of a sudden the Rebels are probably going to want to get that. Also, this same thing probably holds true with the Imperials getting Skystrike Academy. That is almost certainly going to be an Imperial pack. Now, Skystrike Academy is a little bit more difficult to try and figure out exactly what it's going to be. A big part of me thinks Interceptors and TIE Fighters. But a little part of me also really would love for there to be TIE Bomber upgrades in there too. But then again, they could always just throw some bombs in that don't necessarily have to relate directly to, like, they don't have to have a TIE Bomber to have bombs in them. They can, because in a lot of ways, these Aces packs are kind of like not necessarily starters for a faction, but catch-up boxes for a faction, because they tend to have a lot of upgrades in them, and that's kind of what is one of the first things that you're going to see if you open up Heralds of Hope. You're going to see, like, wow, there's a lot of upgrades in here, and one of the things they wanted to do with that is have that be a good kind of like a first purchase for somebody, or maybe a second purchase for somebody if they're in, a new player getting into a faction, or an old player just looking to expand their card collection. So you're going to get a lot of upgrades in these packs if the pattern holds true. So Skystrike Academy, not 100% sure what ships are going to be in there. My guess is TIE Interceptor and TIE Fighter, but I really have talked a little bit about this in other videos. I think there's chances for lots of other ships if they follow the the old, like, if we look at the last, the Imperial Aces. It was the TIE Bomber and the TIE Defender, or was it the Imperial Veterans? But yeah, so Imperial Aces, as a matter of fact, was 2 TIE Interceptors, so Imperial Veterans was that. So they could go a lot of different ways. We also have the Fugitives and Collaborators Squadron pack, which is a little bit more in doubt as to what exactly that is. I feel like that's probably Scum and Villainy. That's what I'm guessing. It seems like that's almost certainly Scum and Villainy, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. I know some people expect a First Order Aces pack, since, of course, the Resistance got theirs with Poe and all of those guys from Episode 9, and there certainly could be. There certainly could be a First Order pack. So I don't know. I don't think Fugitives and Collaborators kind of ties into that, and I also think that maybe Scum and Villainy kind of could use a little bit of love, since they do have a lot of ships, but not a whole lot of stuff in second edition yet. I mean, they have had at least one new ship, or technically I guess 2, because it was the Lando's Falcon has the escape pod, which counts as its own ship, but the name is a little bit more ambiguous, so we don't know for sure what Fugitives and Collaborators are, and I certainly wouldn't have, I guessed a little bit wrong on Heralds of Hope and what that was going to be. So, because it had a code name, and of course we didn't know it was called Heralds of Hope. It had a code name, and of course, guessing we all thought it was the Razor Crest, which brings me to the next thing, in that we're probably going to get some more waves. Right, so we've got these 3 things coming out in March. That doesn't mean that's the only thing that's coming out in all of 2021. There's probably at least another standard wave of new ships that is set to come out, because if this holds true to the Gen Con announcement, they're all going to be previously released ships with new paint schemes, and of course new pilots and upgrade cards. So there probably won't be anything new here as far as actual ships. Now, there's probably at least one new ship in development. And they may be huge ships. This is something else that we haven't talked about in a while, and that Fantasy Flight almost 2 years ago now kind of came out with, hey, we're bringing back huge ships, and we're going to be with the Epic, the box, and you had the Wing Tool and all of that, but also the huge ships were coming back to Star Wars X-Wing, and this is something that I wonder if we're going to see some forward movement on, because we have the Raider that never actually came out, that apparently, and this was a little bit of a drama episode on this channel, the Imperial Raider was supposed to have come out, but they ended up not releasing it in second edition because there were a whole lot of first edition Raiders still available, and I don't think a lot of people bought into those all that much. COVID is obviously a part of it. People can't get together for the big old epic games. Of quite so much. But the other thing is that X-wing is very much like I would call it kind of a tournament centric type of game. Not that you're always playing in tournaments, but people usually play more of the tournament rule set, and Epic is more of a fun type of format. Now, I happen to love Epic. It's one of my favorite formats to play, and of course, you can run Epic tournaments as well. But the standard game is that 200 point kind of dogfight 3x3. And while the huge ships can work in a 200 point game, they won't work. They won't be tournament legal. So it's really curious to see what they're going to do. Now, the huge ship conversion kit was a great value that they came out with, but it also included cards for all 7 factions. So you can now, if you can run, if you've got all the old ships, you can run huge ships for every faction. But the newer factions don't have actually dedicated huge ships of their own. You've got the Corellian Corvette, which really was a rebel ship. And then you've got the Raider, which was an Imperial ship. And then you've got the Sea Rock, which was that scum ship. And then, of course, you also have the GR-75. And you've got the Gazanti, for the Empire and the Rebellion. But, there was nothing that really came out for the other factions that felt like they belonged with the other factions. And there was like, oh, well, this one was still in use during this time, or this one was still in use during this time, so they can make it work. And that's all fine and good. But you haven't had a box that had, like a Galactic Republic or a Separatist, logo on the box and stuff like that. So one of the things that I'm wondering is if they're going to move forward with huge ships in 2021. I would imagine that's probably low on the priority. But one thing I do expect is it to at least release the Raiders, because while they haven't come out and said it, I do believe they do have 2nd edition Raider boxes printed in a warehouse somewhere. With the Fantasy Flight Games logo on them. I don't think if everything's moving to Atomic Mass Games, and presumably maybe we'll see our first kind of actual product announcement from Atomic Mass Games maybe by the end of the year. I think it's going to be weird if they really wait, a year or two, and then finally, release the Raiders in 2.0, but they all say Fantasy Flight Games on them right after we've all been like, wait a second, this is all Atomic Mass Games, isn't it? So they may just say, let's just push these out into the wild. Maybe people will buy them if they have the black box on there. Plus, it's kind of a repainted version, and it has the engine glow painted onto it, so some people may want it for that purpose. Plus, the Raiders are pretty cool. And like they say, hey, look, there's tons of Raiders available. I never see them in any stores. So, maybe if you want to order from Asmodee's warehouse, I don't know. But then again, they're charging $100 for an old 1.0 ship. And it's not a terrible value, though, because you're also getting a TIE Advanced in that Raider. So I guess we'll just have to see what the future of Epic is, and if there is much of a future. Now, Atomic Mass Games might have more of a fun, friendly type of mindset than FFG has had, and might decide to kind of shift the balance a little bit more towards having a priority for huge ships. And I think that would be really fun. And I would love to see what new huge ships come out. I'd love to see if we get hammerheads, or if we get any Galactic Republic stuff, maybe a consular cruiser. There's a lot of that stuff I'd love to see. On to new sculpts and new designs. We know that they've been talking for a long time about doing stuff from The Mandalorian, and this has not been a secret, but there's also been a lot of slowdown and delays with it. There could be a Mandalorian-based wave, or at least a partial wave. At very minimum, a lot of people have been expecting the Razor Crest for a long time. I have certainly been among them. I thought Heralds of Hope was actually going to have been the Razor Crest because it was a code name, and I thought, this makes sense for it to be something like the Razor Crest. But apparently, it was Heralds of Hope. So I wonder if they changed what the code name was at some point. I wonder if the Razor Crest was originally supposed to come out sooner, and then they decided to push it back. I don't know, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. But this could be a great opportunity to bring a lot of characters from The Mandalorian into the game in the forms of crew and other types of like gunners and things like that. But this wasn't the only ship featured in this show, and I don't want to do too many spoilers because I don't know who all has seen all of The Mandalorian, but I'll talk a little bit about some of the other ships. We've got the TIE fighters with the folding wings, the TIE Outlander, which is definitely an option that you can do. I don't know how great these are going to be when compared to an actual TIE fighter. I'm not 100% sure. I like the fact that they can land. You might be able to work some kind of thing where maybe they land on obstacles, like maybe they land on asteroids or something like that, kind of how some of the Separatist drones or the Separatist droids can do. Maybe something like this could be something to do. But it's also a great opportunity for you to actually build foldable wings into it, which is a really cool. But I mean, in the show, it does seem like they pretty much behave a lot like normal TIE fighters. I feel like maybe they're a little more effective than normal TIE fighters. It could just be that these pilots are grizzled veterans and they have better pilots. It would be an opportunity for them to do a few minor little things with TIEs, though. Of course, because the Empire needs TIEs. Clearly in X-Wing, the Empire doesn't have enough ships that start with TIE. But having ships with movable wings would be pretty cool. I actually want to see something like this more in a ground game. I really want to get a couple of these for a ground game that they can fold and step up. And I've always thought X-Wing is really a great setting for a vehicle-based ground game. So I'd love to see, and this is a thing I would love for Atomic Mass to do, is, if you've already got alternate formats for X-Wing, right, with a huge ship like the Epic, or the Epic scenarios and stuff like that, you've already got all these fun, friendly, alternate kind of rule set formats. Well, let's introduce the ground game, which can be an alternate format for X-Wing, and have stuff for that. And it can be its own. It can have its own ground game rule sets on its own, but make them both fully compatible. So you can have X-Wings and Y-Wings like flying through doing bombing runs, and you can also have like turrets and anti-aircraft stuff on the ground. You've got so many ground vehicles, and X-Wing is at a scale where you can fit like multiple AT-ATs and recreate the Battle of Hoth. I think X-Wing's the perfect format for something like that. I'd love to get into that. I think that would be really, 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 really fun. And I don't think it would take away from Legion either, because you're looking at like a build where you could bring like 8 vehicles, 8 AT-ATs to the game, and that doesn't really overlap with what Legion is trying to do. So I think that could be fun. Really like Battle of Hoth or Battle of Scarif kind of recreation, like massive loads of ultra heavy vehicles you could do. Maybe Armada does some of that, but not in the ground format. So it would be fun. And of course, there was also a scene in season 1 where there was this difficult to identify ship that was chasing down the Razor Crest, and it kind of looked kind of sporty, kind of X-Wing-ish, Z95-ish, Fang Fighter-ish, to a certain extent, like some kind of, borrowed some design elements from some of those other fighters, but there's definitely a lot of different craft, and there's more than this that have appeared in the game. There's a lot that are kind of like off to the side, off in the background. A lot of the stuff from season 2 is kind of off to the side, off in the background, that you kind of just see, and maybe just in one shot that isn't really because the show's not a ship centric. But then again, you also have like the New Republic era, and it could be tricky since the New Republic isn't exactly a faction in X-Wing. I don't know if they're going to maybe introduce the New Republic at some point. It seems like they're definitely going in the direction to be able to do that. We've got a whole movie called Rogue Squadron coming out that's supposedly taking place after Episode 9. So are they going to be New Republic fighters, or are they going to be Resistance 2.0 fighters? There's a lot of potential for what's going to happen in the future with X-Wing 2nd Edition. And we really are probably going to have to be very patient this year. So in closing, I want to suggest that we try to slow our expectations for the constant, streaming of articles and news and updates that we had sort of become accustomed to in years past, especially once X-Wing 2.0 came out and we were getting a lot more news. And heck, back when I first got into X-Wing, it was crazy. There was new releases coming out every month almost, and it was nuts. And frankly, the game's got a lot of ships out right now. It doesn't probably need quite that much, but it's probably going to be a little shock to some folks who, like the Armada players out there, know what it's like to wait a year for news or for a year between expansions and stuff. I don't think it'll be that quite that bad, but we gotta probably slow down our expectations because it's going to be a little while before everything is settled and they know exactly what they're working on and what to announce and when to announce it. It will be exciting, though, when we first start getting a lot of news again, especially news coming out of Atomic Mass Games, where we kind of know the future is going. All right, guys, that's all I've got for today. Hopefully, you found this helpful and maybe a little optimistic, maybe a little bit of a downer because you were hoping to have these new Aces packs out in January. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case. We'll probably get them officially announced either late January or mid-February, with articles to follow in the weeks thereafter. That's probably what I would guess, but we'll have to wait and see because late March is almost April. So Captain Obvious strikes again. All right, I want to thank you all so much, and thank you so much to my patrons. You guys are absolutely amazing, and I could not do this without you, so thank you for your continued support. If you're interested in supporting the channel, be sure to check some of the links in the description below. Don't forget to check out luxuryplaystyle.com. I want to thank you so much, and as always, have a great day.